authorized to fire at will.
Good Wednesday. Yeah, good Wednesday evening. Thanks for stopping by my channel. I'm TC. I'm the host, founder, showrunner, show producer, manager, scheduler, janitor, craft services for the entire network. That's me. But yeah, this is my channel. Started it a little over 3 years ago, April 25th of 2020. I can't imagine what was going on at that time that would make somebody who loves liberty feel like they should be talking about it. I thought I was on the cutting edge of something. Turns out that year launched a whole bunch of shows that have now dwarfed me. Thanks a lot, Clint from Liberty Lockdown. But yeah, that's all right. I've had him on, so I'm a big deal. But I have a bigger deal coming on tonight. And so before I bring Ezra in, I got to go through all of the rigmarole. I have coffee and mugs and merchandise and then of course my proud, signed copy of Scott Horton's Enough Already, and then my friend Christie's Liberty and Death up there. She's a phenomenal writer, by the way. Yeah, but I ran across an organization out there in the Twitter exosphere. I don't know what we're supposed to call it. And they are a libertarian youth organization, and their purpose is to get youth passionate and involved. And I think it's a great cause. And I reached out to them, and they put me in contact with Ezra, who must be like their chief muckety muck when it comes to all things media and public relations. And I did check with him. His parents do know that he's on tonight, so when he comes on, don't think that we're keeping him up past his bedtime. He is of age, and his parents know where he is. So here we go. You're going to understand why I made that crack, and I think he's laughing at me, or he's about ready to disconnect, one of the two. Ezra, thanks for doing this tonight. So
absolutely, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
You never get any jokes about your age, I'm sure.
Absolutely not. That has never happened to me once in my life.
Ever. I'm nothing if not original. So Ezra, tell my audience first a little bit about you. You have quite the resume under your belt already.
It's decent. I'm a Rockwood, Tennessee native. I hail from a very rural part of East Tennessee. I'm the Director of Communications for the Liberty Youth Coalition for about 1 year now. I'm also the Editor-in-Chief of Mises Magazine. I was a 2023 Mises University alumni, which in niche libertarian / Austrian economics spaces is a pretty big deal. I was a nominee for the LPA Liberty Activist of the Year Award. I'm very heavily involved in forthcoming legislative accountability efforts in my state here in Tennessee. I'm also an opinion writer on the side. My work has been featured in Ludwig von Mises Institute's Mises Wire. I have my own personal Substack as well, which is coming along nicely. So yeah, that's me. I'm very passionate about liberty. I've always been very passionate about liberty. And now in this position, I have the opportunity to put forth my passion and use it for a very good cause, and a cause that I very much believe in with all my heart.
I'm just fixated on the idea of how rural do you have to be a rural part of East Tennessee. That was a very wow, this kid's rural. And then the other question is are your parents libertarians?
No, not necessarily.
No. They are. They just don't know it yet, right?
You could make that argument.
So he's 19, folks, just so you guys are aware. And if you feel like you've accomplished things in your life, he's 19, and that list that he just gave you is about 5 times longer than most of the people I work with. and they're all twice his age. So, so you are part of this organization that, like I said in the beginning, is very passionate about reaching out to youth and getting them involved with, and I say small L libertarianism because it's, it's a pretty big camp. The big L the party is a pretty big camp, and not everybody understands where that's going or where they've come from, and so you guys are focused on bringing people into the small L philosophical side of libertarianism. And by the way, folks, I promised I wouldn't keep him terrible long tonight. So I'm going to see if I can actually keep my own promise for once and not have an extra long show because, I can tell you the conversation is already going to be good, but we're going to work on capturing brevity and depth at the same time. So when did you guys start? Where'd the focus come from? How many are there of you? Um, don't dox anybody though.
Well, the Liberty Youth Coalition was founded in 2022. It's a very small but very passionate group of young people. Most of us are under the age of 35. Some of us significantly under the age of 35. And
Well, they say never trust anybody over 30.
That is true. I have heard that. Like I said, we're a very passionate group of individuals, and we have some very core principles that guide our organization. We call it the four foundations. So our four foundations, number one, is that education is absolutely essential to promoting liberty. You have to have an educated population before you can have a population that is capable of gaining and, more importantly, maintaining a state of liberty. Also, we believe a whole lot in restoration, because let's face it, there's very few parts of modern America, aside from the Bill of Rights and a few other parts, where I really feel like I could, in good faith, say that I'm a conservative. Because do I want to conserve the Federal Reserve? No. Do I want to conserve all the impingements on liberty since 1913, and particularly after 2001? No, absolutely not. I believe there needs to be less of an emphasis, and we as an organization believe there needs to be less of an emphasis on conserving the status quo and more of an emphasis on restoring to a new state of things, to a new status quo. The United States was founded on what could only legitimately and accurately be described as libertarian principles. There needs to be a restoration of that mindset in this country. There needs to be a minimalistic approach to government, a maximalistic approach to liberty. We've gotten away from that, and I believe that is the source of almost every single problem. If you can name a problem in this country today in 2023, it's largely a result of getting away from liberty and moving towards totalitarian and authoritarian government control. And we also...
I might vote. When are you running for president? Oh, wait, you got to be 35.
All right, yeah.
And then we won't be able to trust you.
Got a ways to go. Yep. Exactly.
No, I interrupted your monologue, and I mean that in a positive way. That's I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm going, he's only 19. I'm serious, dude. I'm like, I wish.
Tom Woods was equally shocked. So.
Oh, that's right. You were on with Tom.
Yeah,
I remember that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a very fun experience. That was fantastic for me. I was like a kid in a candy store.
You were as close to fanboying as you'll ever get.
Something like that.
The staggering thing is that older generations, that whether they be on the left or on the right, look down on the younger generations, and and your generation has brought it on itself to some degree. I can't stand the generational shaming and blaming that takes place when it's all pointed at, oh, you darn boomers, or you all those people in the Great Generation, or oh, you Gen Xers, or like there's 1,400 different generation names now, but there's something to be said for the greatest generation not really being the greatest generation. There's something, no offense, Fred. I don't know where you fall in that camp. There's something to be said for blaming the greatest generation. There's something to be said for blaming the boomers. A lot to be said for blaming the boomers, and even Generation X. But when you know that a generation has contributed more negative to your society and to your culture than it has positive, spending all your time pointing that out doesn't help. It doesn't improve. It doesn't make anything that's arisen as a problem go away. And a lot of what I'm hearing from you is very little to do with let's blame all these other generations. Let's fix now in this generation what we can fix and strive for, which does markedly set you apart from pretty much everybody else in your generation. All that stuff that you just said would get you stoned at most college campuses today.
Yeah, I'm not a very big fan of finger pointing. I think that there's an equal blame here. There's an equal blame with Gen Z. There's an equal blame with millennials. There's an equal blame with boomers. There's always some contribution. There's some contribution that each of these generations made in one way or another to the situation that we find ourselves in. So we have to ask ourselves the question, does sitting around and bickering and pointing fingers at each other and saying, you, no, does that really solve the problem? No, what we need to be doing is solving problems. We need to be moving towards a better future. And the blame game does absolutely nothing to move towards that.
And there again, you're just nailing it. It's like, we could focus on, I want to be careful how I say this. I think there's a place to look at a contemporary, no matter what generation they're in, and saying, you're causing a problem. But if you end there with you're causing a problem, but you don't follow up with, but here's the solution, then you're actually making the problem worse. And, there's the old saw of, if you see a need, fill the need, or if you identify the problem, you better be ready to have a solution. And I think those are great adages.
Mm-hmm.
But they're so easy to just throw out there. And of course, it's always the person that's the biggest cause of the problem that says, don't come at me with the problem unless you have a solution. They're the, don't point it out because, gosh darn it, I'm not going to do anything to fix it. But
right,
as you look around, and yes, there again, there's plenty of blame to be, plenty of finger pointing to do in one aspect that it's positive towards, let's say the Unip Party, if you want to use that phrase right now, because frankly, the Unip Party has, really has a ton of control in every state. It's not just at the federal state level, but at all the state levels. It's opening the door to the conversation with them that I think is going to have a great impact on a movement such as yours, because you're going to be able to give other people in your generation, in your age group, an option other than to disconnect. And that's what I see happening with a lot of people. You get the David Hoggs of the world out there talking about how they're motivating their generation to get involved and take charge. And, in one respect, I respect him. In the other respect, I look at what he's doing and I say, well, here's a young guy who is motivating people, but he's just contributing to the problem because he's putting them right back in the same camp that has been causing these problems in the first place. And that's the Unip Party. And what I hear from you and your organization is that, no, we're actually going to point out what's wrong, but we're going to give the solution by pointing people to a option that actually has answers. How are you guys being received?
We're being received very well, actually. We've formed alliances with other organizations in the Liberty sphere, We're doing very well, and we're blessed for that. We've been able to, develop pamphlets to be distributed across college campuses and things to that nature. With limited resources and limited people, there's only so many things that you can do. But, it only takes a small minority to start a brush fire of freedom in people's minds. I believe that's a Samuel Adams quote. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And that is what this organization stands for. We don't believe that we have to have a majority. We don't think that conceivably it's possible to have a majority, because at the end of the day, most people don't want liberty. And that's just something that you have to accept as a libertarian. That's the first step toward advancing liberty, is realizing that most people don't want it, don't care about what you have to say, either outright reject what you have to say, or are very passive about issues of liberty and government in general. And I think above all, we believe, and this sets us apart from most other organizations in the liberty sphere, that it starts at home. It starts at home. It starts in your local community. And our third pillar is mutual aid. We believe that libertarians shouldn't just be, talking the talk and yak, yak, yak. We should be walking the walk. We should be helping out in our communities. We should be out here, providing for our communities. We should be doing charity work. We should be actively involved in our communities, spreading the message while we make positive change and building a liberty culture at home. Because all of this, every single bit of this, starts at home. It starts in your local community. Before you start trying to change Washington, before you start trying to change Nashville, given the example of myself as a Tennessean, I want to change Rockwood. I want to change Roane County. I want to change my local community. And then I'm going to focus on, getting the toothpick out of everybody else's eye once I've gotten the beam out of my own.
Yeah, you go around trying to pull people's toothpicks out of their eyes. They don't like it. They're very used to their toothpicks. Yeah,
they've developed an affinity for their toothpicks, you might say.
You didn't think I was going to have something to say to that, did you? Give me a answer if you can, and because there again, as a libertarian, you can't speak for everybody because that would be authoritarian and not libertarian.
I make it a very big point not to speak for everyone.
Exactly. Oh, and by the way, those of you that are watching, especially if you're here because of Ezra, please make sure you're sharing this out. I would love for more of this message to get out. If you're one of my fans and you're watching this, share it, because I think this is a excellent conversation for everyone to be having. And hello to everybody in the chat. Give me an example of how you would approach, let's say, the hot button issue of abortion as a libertarian youth. And because we keep hearing that the Republicans are losing because of the issue of abortion, and the Democrats are losing because of the Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. But it's harder to pull people away from the Democrats than it is to pull people away from the Republicans, and to swing them into more of the liberty mindset, because for a very long time, the Republicans were perceived, I look back on it now and I would say not rightly so, but they were perceived as the party of liberty, the party of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. We all know that's not true, but that's the perception. And so when people are presented with a party that actually loves those things, they will start to have their eyes opened. So how do you approach an issue, like say you're reaching out to someone who has very traditional conservative values, and so they oppose abortion, and they think that they have to remain in the Republican Party to make an impact on that? How would you have that argument with a person your age? Not an actual argument, but what argument would you make with a person in your age bracket or your generation who says, look, I love liberty, but I need to be with an organization that is, opposed to infanticide?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think the answer to that question is very simple. It's in how you frame your views. And this is a problem that we have with libertarians and with what we generally refer to as the dissident right in general, is not knowing how to frame views. and particularly when it comes to the issue of abortion, I would say that taking a pro-family approach is the best way to approach that having a family is good, that having children is good, that, suggesting that children are bad for the environment or are bad for society in general is bogus, and suggesting that having a child is the greatest thing that you could do. You're fulfilling your purpose. So if someone told me that I need to be in the Republican Party because the Republican Party, at least in theory, stands against abortion, I would ask a very simple question. I would say, why? Why do you need to be in the Republican Party? Is the Republican Party doing anything to promote the views that you have? So is the Republican Party saying, well, we stand against abortion because this person stands against abortion, or are they saying that we stand against abortion because we want this person's vote? So you need to be very careful about who you give your vote, because oftentimes there's a phenomenon in politics that I like to call fake passion. And fake passion is whenever someone can stand up in front of a room and can give a very passionate, very moving speech about an issue and not believe a single word of what they're saying. But the crowd is on their feet. It's a raucous occasion. Everyone is cheering them on, and they don't believe a single word of what they were saying. So I would say you should test your politicians. I would say you should ask.
So you mean pretty much every politician out there right now? So.
Basically 99%
pretty much,
of
not
politicians
all, but...
do this. And I would ask the question. I would say, well, you claim that this party has X view. Well, ask yourself, why does this party have X view? Why do these politicians have X view? Is it because they really believe this, or is it because they're trying to appease you so that you go and you drop your ballot in the ballot box for them and they can continue to maintain power?
When in the way you frame that, which I think is phenomenal, when you frame an issue like abortion that way, you can really take that exact same framework for the argument that you're going to make to pretty much any issue, whether it be the Second Amendment or the First Amendment or taxation or whatever. And that's, I'm glad to hear you approach it that way, because that's really how I've had to approach it over the last couple of years, especially as I start to point out to people, like, you keep telling me, right now, the big one is, got to vote for Donald Trump, got to vote for Donald Trump. He's going to empty the swamp, or whatever the case might be. And when you start to ask questions without getting into finger pointing, like you said, what you end up with is an engagement where people are really kind of forced to think, you know what, you're right. I'll give a perfect example, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, since you were a little younger when this was going on. Hard for me to even think about that, but you weren't even old enough to vote when this happened.
Oh dear.
During the COVID response, it was largely so-called conservatives and Republicans who were really coming out against the lockdowns, if people were coming out, and of course libertarians, those those who don't know this, there were actually libertarians back in 2020. It's not something that just happened. But it was largely libertarians and some Republicans that were coming out, and these Republicans were coming out and saying, I oppose this, I oppose this, I oppose this. But and then they tell you, if we want to avoid that again, we have to have Donald Trump as president in 2024. But when you point out or ask the question, who gave us the emergency, this executive order declaring a national emergency for COVID, they look at you very dumbfounded. Mm-hmm. When you point out to them that it was Donald Trump, and that he even threatened to use federal powers to shut down states.
State power, correct.
Yeah.
Once governors began opening up, I remember a very specific case in which Donald Trump was out on the White House lawn, I believe it was, and he's speaking to reporters, as presidents often do, and they're asking him about what he thinks about Governor Brian Kemp about to open up the state of Georgia and end the lockdown. And his response is, I'm not happy with Brian Kemp. And he says something to the effect of, we're going to look at it. What are you going to look at? Well, in this case, I believe what he meant is that they're going to look at what the federal government can do to usurp the state authority in this manner. So that doesn't sound very much like an anti-lockdown crusader to me, but I'm open to being corrected.
And to this day, he still brags about everything he did with COVID and
refuses to take responsibility for anything whatsoever. Made no wrong moves.
Right. Oh, no, never. I mean, getting any politician to ever admit they screwed up on a decision is pretty hard. So when it happened,
it's hard to get a politician to admit that they screwed up, but it's even harder to get people that love a politician to admit that their favorite politician screwed up. And that's particularly the case whenever it comes to Trump supporters, and that they will defend him through pretty much anything, no matter how bad it looks. There will be some defense. And in the case of lockdowns, it's basically, well, he was just listening to the experts. Well, that didn't go so well, did it?
Yeah, right. He could have fired Fauci. No, they had him over a barrel. I'm like, he was going to drain the swamp. You wanted me to believe he was going to drain the swamp, but he couldn't fire Fauci. But yeah, anyway, I love that you picked up on that right away and ran with it, because it's kind of, it's there again, it's the difference between coming at people and saying, your president is bad and I don't like his policies. It's different when you go, okay, let's explore your position, whatever the case might be. And you can do the same thing with the Democrats.
I absolutely love to do this. I love to follow arguments to a logical conclusion, because I think oftentimes we find the problems with arguments when we follow them out to their logical conclusion.
Reductio ad absurdum.
Exactly. That's one of my favorite things in the world.
You have to. You literally have to take everything to that reductio ad absurdum, because if you don't, then you're really just playing the piecemeal game. If you can look down the road of a decision and go, okay, if we can make this decision now and consider it safe, what's the fallout? And we hear a lot of people like, Clint from Liberty Lockdown and Dave and Robbie from, Part of the Problem, and Tom Woods, they talk about blowback all the time.
Blowback. Yep.
Yeah. If we can look at blowback as people who, hate, and you made reference to the 2001 Patriot Act. I knew exactly what you were referring to when you brought up 2001. When you look at 2001, the Patriot Act, and you look at all these other things, nobody thinks about the blowback of those. They think about, oh man, well, ISIS formed because of Iraq, our war in Iraq. And we could talk about the blowback, about the decision-making there, but there's a lot of blowback on domestic decisions made by the Unip Party that you have to be able to get past the initial reaction of, oh God, I hate more taxes, but what's printing money going to do in this situation besides give you money in your pocket right now? Because that's what people think. Oh, they're going to create another $10 billion to flood into our economy, and we're going to all get stimulus checks. Right. But what's the blowback on that 10, 15, 20, 25 years down the road? And most people can't do that. And you have got to be able to steelman that at this, understand it from their perspective. You have to be able to reduce it to its most logical conclusion, which is it's going to destroy the economy, and here's why, and then be able to walk it back for them and start to ask some questions. You have a lot of people in your generation who are really starting to talk about things like universal basic income. I know you hear this a lot. I hear it from so many people in your generation. Oh, UBI is great. And CBDC is, they don't use that terminology, but they really, because a lot of them think they're into crypto, but what they're really talking about is just not having to carry cash.
Right.
And so
the convenience factor of it, they completely ignore the, the surveillance factor of it and the loss of liberty factor of it in favor of the convenience factor.
How would you address UBI and CBDC with someone your age, especially since you guys are the computer generation, the internet generation. I mean, there again, it was around well before your time, but you guys are really the ones, like, you don't know a time prior to a prevailing access to the internet and the ease of information. So I think the argument with someone in your generation is harder than it would be with someone my generation, or
Mhm.
even the millennials.
You'd be surprised. But I think young people tend to approach things from a very emotional point of view. Oh, here's these people that are
Old people too,
downtrodden.
bro.
Pretty much everyone. And I couldn't have more disdain for that way of approaching an argument. I've always been more of a reason and logic kind of guy. And I think that particularly in terms of a UBI, the arguments are all completely emotional. It's basically, oh, we have people in society that cannot survive on their own, and therefore they need the government to provide them with just the bare minimum to get them, up on their feet. Well, I think there's been so much research that it's not even worth mentioning that suggests that welfare does nothing to combat poverty and instead traps people in poverty. And that's just welfare. That's just welfare checks. That's just monthly welfare checks. What do you think the result would be if you started giving out money to people, large amounts of money to people? In fact, enough money to where that people have a pretty standard of living, a pretty good standard of living. And if you started giving out that much money to people, how do you think that would, take the issue to the next level with trapping people in poverty? And I just have to think of this from the perspective, if I were an extremely, poverty-stricken person, and how I would approach this, and I think I would approach this from two angles. I would say, okay, I am getting everything that I need from the government, from these UBI checks. I don't need to get a job. I have no incentive to get myself out of my situation. Why do I want a job? I can probably make more from these UBI checks than I can make if I go down to my local McDonald's and pick up a job flipping burgers. So why do I have any incentive to be a productive member of society when I already have everything that I need to live a relatively comfortable lifestyle without ever changing my situation? And I think the second perspective that I would have on that, if I were in that situation, is one of guilt and a feeling of degradement. In that I am not strong enough, I am not smart enough to get myself out of my situation. I cannot physically change my situation for the better.
Yep.
I have to have this constant IV drip of public money coming into my coffers in order for me to be able to survive. And I think there's research into this that shows that people that are on welfare are more prone to suicide. And people that are on welfare are more prone to suicidal thoughts. And I can understand why if I put myself in their shoes. And I understand that I can't provide for my family. I can't provide for my family. I can't provide for myself. I can't buy anything myself. I mean, at that point, you start to adopt kind of a nihilistic perspective, right? Like, I'm just living. Is there anything else that I'm doing? Is there anything else that I'm contributing to society? My existence is meaningless because if I cannot survive myself, if I cannot provide for myself in any way, shape, or form, and I have to have other people provide for me, then what is the need in me living? Like, I would feel like a burden. I would feel like a burden on other people. And I think that's something that happens. And there's very good data to back that up. So a UBI, if we're just talking about regular welfare, if we're talking about, checks that people get in the mail on the first of the month that are, in poverty or oftentimes on drugs, especially in my part of the country, if that's the effect of those kind of stimulants, what would be the effect of a UBI? And I think to answer your second question, or the argument against the CBDC is, in my opinion, very simple.
Well, you're a Mises guy, so I already know what you're. But you go ahead for the audience. So.
I cannot logically conceive how anyone with half a brain could think that the government having absolute control over my finances is a good thing. How the government having basically an off switch to my bank account is a good thing. How throughout all the government abuses of power throughout history, that the government is just going
no
to...
one's ever abused us. Stop that.
Of course not. Of course not. Well, I mean, I'll just go as far back as 2001, right? After 2001, after 9/11, after the Patriot Act, I don't see how anyone can imagine that the government could have full control, have a central bank digital currency, have full control of the currency, full control of the money, control our purse strings, and not abuse that power. Like, that's an absurd position to take, because it is not backed up by history, and it's not backed up by basic logic. So I just think that's absolutely ridiculous.
If CBDC had been available to the federal state immediately following September 11th, 2001, before the Patriot Act even went into effect, they would have been shutting down everybody's accounts. Everybody's. If not seizing.
You don't support the invasion of Iraq? Oh, well, we'll shut down your account.
You must be an enemy.
Yeah. Oh, you're a Saddam supporter. We'll shut off your account. And this is something that the government would absolutely make use of. It's an absurd idea, but oftentimes absurd ideas are embraced by the general population purely for convenience's sake, or because it sounds good.
Yeah, you start to threaten people's comfort. You start to make them, feel some discomfort, and they will cave pretty fast and pretty hard. And the ones that don't, are the ones that will be made examples of. And you look at what Canada did to their truckers protest. I mean, they have even more control over bank accounts and whatnot in Canada than the federal state does here, and they ruin people overnight. No due process. Just, you're taking part in this, we're taking it all. And some of those people still haven't gotten it back. And if people are so dense as to think...
Canada doesn't even technically have a central bank digital currency, and they're still able to freeze people's bank accounts.
And just take it. And when you think abuses like that can't happen, just look at what the United States did with the inception of civil asset forfeiture. And just the ability for them to pull you over for some made up reason on a traffic stop and go and start to ask questions like, do you have any guns, drugs, or money in the car? And you not knowing to shut up, like, as a, don't talk to cops, by the way, ever. I don't care how nice they're being. I don't care if your pants are on fire and they're offering to put it out. If they say, hey, if you answer this question, I'll put the fire out. And just go, you know what? I got this, bro. We don't need to talk.
I have a lot of friends in law, and that's like the number one rule. That's what they tell me all the time.
Yeah. You never talk to cops. Cops will tell you don't talk to cops.
Yeah. If you're going to talk to cops, you better make sure your lawyer's present.
Yeah. And make sure your lawyer doesn't talk to cops either. But with civil asset forfeiture, they just pull you over and start asking questions. You answer the question the wrong way, and that $500 or $5,000 or whatever the case might be, they'll just take it. How much more so will they do that if they have access to everything that you have by pushing a button and saying, oh, we see here that you complained about us bombing Yemen. You're a terrorist. We're taking it all. No warning, no nothing. And then shutting you out of it. Not just taking it, but shutting you out. And yeah, it'll be abused. It'll definitely be abused. That's the intent of it, is to abuse you. It's to make you a slave, which you already are anyway. I mean, let's just be honest. As much as we love liberty, there's not a single person living in the United States right now that's not a slave. We're all slaves. And
At least for 30% of the time that you're working, you are in fact a slave because you're working specifically for the government.
yeah,
Depending on your income level and your tax bracket, whatever percentage of your income that you have stolen from you by the government, you are essentially a slave for whatever percentage of time, pursuant to the percent that you have your money taken from the government. I think if you have a 28% tax rate, then I would say for 28% of the year you work as a slave.
just think about it. Every time you clock in, if you have a hourly job, or even salary, just look at it this way, for basically the first quarter of your day. So before your first coffee break, you are working for the federal government, the federal state, and the state, and the county, and everybody else.
Correct. In a way, everyone's a federal employee.
Yeah. Except we don't get paid as well as people that are actually on the payroll. So
we're not seeing any of them benefits, are we?
No, I don't have qualified immunity working in the warehouse. I'll tell you that.
Exactly.
What do you think is? Well, let's just be honest. The libertarian movement has a bit of a reputation for being full of weirdos. I mean, it's just true. And, anybody with a libertarian mindset will acknowledge, yeah, we think a little different than a lot of the rest of you've said it yourself. People they think they love freedom and they want liberty, but they don't. They really don't. So when you think like you do, Ezra, or the way I do, it does make us stand out. We are, is it Dave Smith that jokes often about the autistic side of the libertarian movement? And so when you think about it, how do you overcome that, especially that oddity that people see in those of us? Because it is very easy for us to kind of not rabbit hole, but get very focused on a particular subject, like CBDC or UBI or the First Amendment or the Second Amendment. How do you take that liberty loving, freedom fighting mindset, walk up to somebody in your own generation and say, I have some answers for some of the problems I know you're facing, without losing them, because you see this all the time. When you engage in this conversation, people will be interested for about 5 minutes and then their eyes start to glaze over, like, yeah, great, you think that, but you're never going to be able to make it happen. And next thing you know, they're kind of drifting off. Mm-hmm. How do you keep people engaged, especially in your generation, when there's so much going on around them? And I'll use the example, your generation does have a tendency right now to really get sucked into the gun control debate on the side of, take all the guns, because your generation, like specifically in Tennessee, experienced the Nashville shooting in a way that other generations have never had to deal with. How do you get past that initial shell, keep them from having their eyes glaze over, and actually engage in the conversation?
Well, first of all, I would just say that the gun control debate was over when the first 3D printer came off the assembly line. That debate is no longer happening. That debate is now over. However, I would say that if I'm approaching this from a young person, which again approaches things from an emotional perspective, I would just ask them, what good does it do to take away the keys of all the other drivers because of one drunk driver? Oh, no, let's not even say one drunk driver. Let's say we have, I don't have the numbers in front of me. Well, we have 3,000 drunk driving incidents per year, somewhere in that range. I don't know. But if we have 3,000 drunk
drivers, you just talking about your county, or?
Yeah, like on a local level or on a state level. I'm thinking state of Tennessee. I'm not really sure, but if I were going to make an estimate,
if your numbers reflect what I saw in my near 13-year career with a local law enforcement agency, 3,000 would be law enforcement would be celebrating that as a victory.
Yeah, well, in the state of Tennessee, I'm not sure on the exact numbers, but I would say that if you had 3,000 as an estimate drunk drivers, and you have millions of other drivers, it doesn't make any sense to, ground everybody and say, yeah, no more driving. We're taking away all of your cars because these few people have driven drunk. It doesn't make any sense in that.
But people fall for that argument all the
scenario.
time, Ezra.
Yeah, of course
they would fall for that argument for driving.
Of course, yeah. A lot of people would fall for some very absurd arguments, and I think what we have to do,
they would jump on board with it and go, I love the idea of 15-minute cities, so no skin off my nose.
There are some people out there that would embrace those ideas, and I think that just speaks to how far we've moved. The Overton window has moved away from liberty. But I think reasonable people would be able to see the logic in that argument. But I would also say that, yeah, the oddity of libertarians is that while a conservative will tell you that, yeah, we don't want any new gun laws, and that we have a Second Amendment that protects our right to keep and bear arms, but
does it?
We can have a few reasonable gun laws that are gonna, protect us, and we just really we really need to obey these laws because we're good citizens. Whereas a libertarian would say, oh, it's illegal to have this part on my gun, well, let me buy 10 of them, because nullification and disobedience, civil disobedience, is what sets libertarians apart. Whereas other people would say, oh, we need to comply with this because it's for the good of society. Libertarians say, to heck with society. Society doesn't exist. There is no separate entity called society. It's only individuals. And individuals have to be able to make their own choices. Otherwise, we lose our individuality and we become nothing more than robots.
And you destroy the society you think you're preserving.
Exactly. You find yourself with no liberty.
Yeah. There's such an emphasis on what's good for society, and that's the argument that every single person makes, is how is this going to be good for the social group that I find myself in. And instead of approaching everything from a voluntarist mindset, or because we don't want to use the word anarchist because people are terrified of that word, but when you approach it from a voluntarist or anarchist mindset, like ultimately we all live that way. We live in a voluntarist society or culture anyway. Like
Within
I don't get up in the within
Exactly.
ourselves, because I don't get up in the morning, and I know you don't get up in the morning and go, okay, what laws do I need to make sure I'm not breaking today so that everybody around me is comfortable? We get up and go, I'm going to go out and I'm going to conduct my business in a way that's safe and good for me, and that will ultimately be good for my neighbor. Without ever going, I wonder if I do 65 in a 60 and I get pulled over, is that going to be good for my neighbor? No, I just go, like, I'm going to drive the flow of traffic because I need to get where I'm going and I don't want to kill anybody. That's it.
Exactly.
And it's ultimately when an overbearing, controlling state steps in and says, you must travel at this speed in this area for this long, where you start to have problems. People probably don't understand. You might understand where I'm going with this, but we see it all the time. I just had this experience just the other day, and I wish I had it on dash cam. I didn't have my dash cams in at the time. Minnesota has a new move over law that has extended the penalties for not moving over for law enforcement, especially.
Tennessee has that as well. Just recently got put into place.
And I kid you not, this is exactly where my brain went, and it won't surprise you because we share a lot of the same views, obviously. Going down the road, rush hour, car pulled over by state patrol in the metro area in the middle of rush hour, probably speeding. I don't know why. because speeding is unsafe for everyone else and you're endangering everyone else. But because they were pulled over in this corridor on a shoulder in an urban area, all the traffic, because of this new law, was all squeezed into 2 lanes with very little notice. And there were brake lights and, like horns honking all over the place because people were coming up on the scene of this pullover that was being conducted for safety, but forcing everybody into an unsafe situation.
Exactly.
And how this ties in to what we were talking about is that nobody gets up in the morning and goes, I hope I can run a cop down on the side of the road today. That's like you're just that's not it. We've been pulling away from vehicles on the side of the road ever since cars have been stopped on the side of the road. That it's just a natural instinct for us to live as voluntarist. That's it. It's just a natural instinct. We don't need a law to step in. Anytime you introduce a law, you actually increase the level of risk, danger, and lack of safety for everyone involved. I don't know. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I agree with that. And when I first heard about the institution of the new get over law, my first thought was like, I like to play out a lot of scenarios in my mind when I'm thinking about ideas and I'm trying to weigh, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? And the scenario that I come up with is there's a cop got somebody pulled over on the side of the road, right? And I got a very busy highway here, right, that I'm driving on. I'm driving on the highway. I'm in the right lane. I'm booking it because I got to get somewhere. There's a cop pulled over on the right shoulder that's got somebody pulled over for whatever reason. The law says that I have to get over into the left lane. There's a problem. I look into my rearview mirror and I see that there are too many cars coming way too fast for me to safely get into the left lane. Do you think on any planet that I am going to get over into the left lane and kill myself to keep from not breaking some law? Absolutely not.
And so then that raises the question of why does a law like that exist? Because we're just not hearing, and I hate to say, I got a brother that's in law enforcement still. You're just not hearing about a disproportionately large number of law enforcement officers being struck and killed on the side of the road, because if you were, it'd be on the news every day.
Exactly.
So what's the real motivation here? It's just another layer of control. It's another layer of enslavement. And people respond to it by going, yes, can I have another? Yes, sir, please give me more. And govern me harder, daddy, is what I like to say to people.
Essentially, my definition of government is a little different from other people's definition of government. I agree with Thomas Massey. I think government is what the state can get away with. That's literally what government is. It's just what the state can get away with. Is how many buttons can they push before people start to push back. And right now they're working you like a calculator, people. They're pushing all your buttons and you're not doing.
They are working you.
You're
like
not
a
doing
calculator.
anything. You're not doing anything about it. They're like, we're home free. I mean, how much more can we do? I mean, we've pretty much done everything. Like at this point, we surveil you in your home. We got registries of everything you've ever done, every text you've ever made, every phone call you've ever made. Like, how much more of your liberty are you just going to let us have? And that's a serious question. They're genuinely curious. Like, when are you going to start to fight back? And until you start to fight back, they're not going to stop. It's very clear. The beatings will continue until morale improves.
Yes. Oh, you have an old soul because you just quoted an old movie.
I do have kind of an old soul.
I don't want to keep you for too much longer because we said we weren't going to do this for terrible long. I could actually have this conversation. I love running into people like you. When you look at the overall state of the Libertarian Party, which I know you guys obviously are going to lean into pretty heavily, When you look into the overall state of the Libertarian Party, and you obviously have a leaning towards the Mises Caucus, I pretty sure, considering you are a graduate of the Institute. Are you encouraged by the direction that the Mises Caucus has taken the National Party? Are you concerned with some of the infighting and the pushback that we've been seeing, or do you think it's all a lot of uproar over nothing, and that it's just hurt feelings causing people to respond the way they are? He says, take a drink and think about it.
In my official capacity, I'm hesitant to comment on the state of the Libertarian Party.
Totally understand, and you did a very good job of laying out why you can't comment. I wasn't trying to spring anything on you. I would just
functionally, LYC is a nonpartisan organization.
Right.
So we don't really have the ability to be able to go out and endorse one party or another.
Sure.
We can certainly endorse by the issue, but the IRS doesn't look very kindly on violations of campaign finance law.
Right. It's one of those buttons that's being pushed. Exactly. And you have to know which buttons you can dance around and which ones you just can't go anywhere near.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
especially when it comes to 3-letter agencies at the federal state level.
Yeah, and with my efforts here in Tennessee with other people, for legislative accountability, I mean, I'm genuinely concerned. I start going around, I start walking around the Capitol, I start meeting people, I start having meetings. How long before I have to get registered as a lobbyist? Like, it's like the scarlet letter for political activists, right? In certain states, is that in certain states, if you are active in state politics, if you're at the Capitol, if you're constantly talking to representatives, you're eventually going to have to be officially registered as a lobbyist. You're going to have to run around with a little tag on your suit coat. It's going to say Ezra Wyrick, registered lobbyist, and everybody's going to look down their nose at you because nobody likes a lobbyist.
And I was actually just going to say, if we were going to create a registry, for an official registry for anything, I actually do think that an official registry of all lobbyists should exist, and that they should all be on house arrest. So that's just
I personally, I won't speak on behalf of the organization, but speaking in a personal capacity, I believe in banning lobbying in politics. I don't believe that lobbying should exist. Direct lobbying on behalf of unions and things to that nature is a negative force in politics that has no place in politics.
Sorry, I'm answering someone in the chat.
You're fine.
I'm like I said, I'm my own showrunner and everything else. I don't know how people. I don't know how people do it. I mean, I got this all figured out.
You're your own producer.
My own producer, showrunner, social media coordinator. That's why I only have really pretty much just one social media account.
I love it. You're definitely having some success in this sphere, and that's awesome. I'm glad that you see a lot of people can do.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because sometimes I'm like, gosh, I'm not getting any traction. So, give everybody a kind of a succinct, this is where we want to go, and this is what we want to promote going into the 2024 election cycle, without, of course, endorsing anything but issues. Yeah.
In terms of the Liberty Youth Coalition.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that we like to promote is decentralization. I mean, we advocate for the decentralization of power as much as feasibly possible. We advocate for a word that ticks a lot of people off, but a word I personally love and we as an organization love is nullification. Just say no of unjust laws. Like I mentioned before, we advocate for, voluntary mutual aid societies, an alternative to state welfare, and starting that in your local community, and for increased localization, We want to, reinvigorate the strength of the Ninth and 10th Amendments. Those are two forgotten amendments that aren't really followed anymore.
You
And
can't even mention the
when it-
10th Amendment to most people without them going, "What's that?"
yeah, try mentioning the Ninth Amendment. In terms of culture, I think culture, and we believe as an organization that culture is one of the biggest parts of it, one of the most important cogs in the machine. And we believe in and we advocate for a culture that's most beneficial to the preservation and prospering of liberty. So we oppose this, left-wing, quote-unquote, woke culture in pretty much all of its forms. We believe that people should not be judged as members of a group collectively, such as race or sex, but rather as individuals. We support the creation of a liberty culture, a culture where we can judge people based on how we feel about them as an individual and not what group they're a part of. And I think we think as an organization that's in accordance with liberty, and that's the only way to do it if you're approaching things from a liberty perspective.
Yeah.
An important issue that a lot of libertarians care about, and we're certainly among those ranks, is that peace. We believe that war should be a last result, should only be used in accordance with the just war doctrine, like it was advocated by the great Ron Paul. We seek the breaking away of the power of the military-industrial complex over society and the state. The complete abolition of the military-industrial complex is certainly one of our long-term goals that we'd like to work towards. Life, as I'm just running down, the pillars here of our organization, like what we stand for. You asked the question, where do we want to go? And I'm trying to give you this kind of this summary of where we stand on a variety of different issues. So when it comes to life,
I love it. You're nailing it without treading on anybody's toes needlessly.
That's what I like to do. That's kind of my style. But I will tread on toes when toes need to be tread upon. When it comes to life, we believe that all people are self-owning. We believe in the concept of self-ownership. All human life should be defended, no matter its age, its sex, its race. We believe that an individual has the right to defend their life. We believe that there's a conversation to be had about defending life, even the forms of life. We stand for a whole lot, and we believe that liberty and liberty is probably we're the Liberty Youth Coalition, right? Not the Prosperity Youth Coalition, not the Life Coalition, not the Peace Coalition. Although those are our, some of our main things. We believe in liberty above all. We believe that the preservation of liberty is one of the highest aims that a society could possibly have, and the defense of, in particular, civil liberties. Right. All Americans have a right to be free of unwarranted government surveillance. They have a right to be free of state intervention in children's education. They have a right to be free from government mandates on personal health decisions. They have the right to be free of any such violation on their personal liberty. We advocate for the complete and total abolition of the Patriot Act and other similar surveillance laws, the abolition of laws restricting firearm possession, all laws restricting firearm possession. The Second Amendment is absolute. The right to keep and bear arms is absolute. All gun laws are an infringement. That's the official position of LYC. The abolition of government vaccine mandates and passports, and the abolition of the Federal Department of Education, among many, many other departments in the bureaucracy. We also, finally, we want to promote prosperity. We believe in the American dream. We believe that every American should be free to pursue his betterment with minimal to no state involvement. And we hold that free market capitalism, particularly in the Austrian tradition, in terms of economics, are the best systems for achieving prosperity.
Yes.
And core to that conviction is a belief that the Federal Reserve Bank and the banking cartel should be abolished. And
that's right.
Conversely, we condemn any and all bailouts of large businesses at the expense of the American working class, like what happened in 2008. So that's pretty much where we stand. That's the best summary I can give you of where we stand on the most important issues.
That's phenomenal. I wish more youth. And when you're 53 years old, it's harder to find anybody that's not in the younger than me age category. I wish that more youth would start to hear this message and think about it. If somebody's watching and they want to reach out to you guys outside of social media, where can they find you?
You can reach out to us directly on our website at libertylyceum.com. That's libertylyceum.com. If you'd like to submit an article to Mises Magazine, which I hadn't mentioned yet, that's one of many things that we do. We have a blog of sorts, a newsletter. We want people to be able to get their views out there, and people that feel like they're being censored or they can't be published in any huge news publication, and because their thoughts are not on the, I think what Tom Woods refers to as the 3x5 card of allowable opinion.
Yeah.
Then you can come to Mises Magazine, and I'd be more than happy to print your thoughts. So if you have something you want to submit to us, you have an article that you want to submit to us, you can submit that to our editorial team. Jennifer, just great people over there. We have a fantastic work culture. We'll work with you, and we'll get your article in the magazine. LYC submissions at protonmail.com is the best place for you to send article submissions. Obviously, the social media links, I assume, will be in the
description.
You're the YouTube guy. The description of the video, exactly.
Yes,
exactly,
I am the YouTube guy. As soon as I get all of them,
right.
That's the only thing I think I was missing. So if we can get those, so you guys can hit me up with those, and I'll get them added to the description.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get someone to hit you up with those. But I have the Twitter link on hand right now. It's at Liberty Youth Co. It's very simple. If you want to send us a DM, if you have something that you think we could help you out with, or you think you could help us out with,
they are quick to respond.
Yeah, we have a great team that's waiting to respond to your questions or your queries, or if you have something that you feel like you can help us out with, don't hesitate to reach out.
Are you guys looking?
We would love to talk to you.
Are you guys looking to put chapters and like specifically put chapters in the States? And it doesn't have to be a long answer. It's just kind of we'd love to have a chapter organization, or is it just not where you're at right now?
We would love to start doing chapter organizations, but we'd like to flesh out the organization a bit more before we start taking those big steps.
Yeah, that's it's a great problem to have if you get people interested, where you have to start talking about what's it going to look like. So, Ezra, I think we did it. I think we're at a place where we can say we covered some good topics. I'd love to, if you have anybody else from the organization, or anybody else you guys think that I should talk to, I'd love to have them on sometime. Love to have people come in and share their small L libertarian perspectives and get people interested. And it's nice to see someone with some youth and some vim and vigor out there, expressing these things in a very intelligent and articulate way, and not be 75 years old and act like they're speaking in front of a stuffed shirt college class. So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I really appreciate you having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I did not pay him to say that, by the way.
Anytime you want to reach out to us, and they can, work out a way to get me back on your show at some point in the near future, I mean, I would absolutely be willing to do that. Anybody else that you'd like to talk to, reach out to us. Tell us who you want to talk to. Pick somebody off the website, and I'll do my level best to make sure that we will
get them in front of a camera.
We'll try.
You will do this. We are a liberty-minded organization. You have no choice. Well, I really appreciate your time tonight, and I'll let you go, and I'll do a quick close, and make sure you tell your organization to share this out.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night. All right, folks. So here, if you cannot be inspired by this conversation, by the intelligence and the wit and the absolute grasp of the knowledge of what liberty means in someone who's 19 years old, this is not the age group that is known for their love of liberty right now. That particular generation, as much as I wish it weren't true, is kind of known for sheepish compliance, and social pressure to make you comply with whatever is socially acceptable. And everything that Ezra said tonight should be what's socially acceptable. But you'd be surprised how much people like him will be ostracized by their own generation and even older generations. Older generations have a tendency to be dismissive, and younger generations have a tendency to use a lot of social bullying to get people to go along. And as you could tell, guys like Ezra and that entire organization that he's speaking for, they don't look like or seem like they're going to cave into any of those kind of pressures to me. And we need more of that. So make sure that you share this out, like, comment, and share so it stays up in the algorithm. And reach out to the Liberty Youth Coalition, especially if you have young people in your life. Get them involved because they need to be involved. Because we can only do so much with the older generations to fix the wrongs that have been committed. But this upcoming youthful generation could fix a lot if we got enough people on board. So head over to my Subscribestar if you like the content. And if you feel it, worthy, I hate shilling. I cannot shill for myself very well. Go over to my Subscribestar, pick a level of support, and throw me some love. That's how I'll just say it. Give me some love over on Subscribestar, or reach out to me, mbrrpodcast@yahoo.com, if you're interested in some merch. Working on some new things to invigorate the merch that I do have. Pull your head out of the clouds. Get yourself interested in things that matter. Politics doesn't have to be boring or dry. Liberty is exciting and it's thrilling. And pay attention to what's going on around you. Don't be sucked into whatever thing they're throwing at you right now to take your eyes off of what's most important. Because right now, what's most important is what they're doing to us here at home. Things going around the world are important, but more often than not, they work as distractions. So I don't want to name that particular conflict right now, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Pay attention to it, but pay more attention to what they're doing to you behind the scenes as all these other things are going on around you. As always, my friends, fight for your liberty. It is yours. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. And sic semper tyrannis.
We are going for liftoff in T-30. Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.